Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this call. Um, I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. So today we'll talk about Nutanix file server. Uh, let me introduce myself first. My name is Amr Abdeshafi. I'm a senior consultant with Redington Golf as a part of Converging infrastructure group team. I take care of the SDDC stack, which is Nutanix is a part of. So I handle the pre-sales and sales enablement and sessions for the partners. And let's start talking about Nutanix file server. So the agenda for us today is product overview. What lies beneath? What is the Nutanix infrastructure and architecture? If you didn't hear about it before, this will be a good time to do so. How we set the conversation starter for Nutanix files, how to handle objections, what is the Nutanix files features, and a quick recap. So product overview. If you know Nutanix AFS or Acropolis file server, it's the same as Nutanix files. It's the same solution. It's just we change the name of it to make it more one word. So it's a file server, enterprise file server, which sits on top of Nutanix. So as a product, why we should care about NAS solution or file storage solution? Because data has been growing for the past few years by exponential rate. So one study says every 2 years the total size of data is doubling. But the point here, unstructured data is the one which we see here in blue, which is growing with higher rates than structured data. Why is this? Because if you see here a traditional file server in finance department, you will have each year with one folder, and each year will have different. If each folder will have each finance folder will have different folders, and each folder will have different years, and the rate will increase a lot per days. And the data size itself is increasing with the big data and all of that. So if you now we have two players in the file server space. The traditional one was mainly hardware based, mainly the feature is relying on hardware, doing the tested and it's a tested performance wise and replication. All of this is there for a long time, and it was consuming 80% of the market space in 2017. Now the cloud-like alternative like Amazon EFS and Google Drive and Dropbox is gaining a lot of market share because as we move on, the workload is dividing between on-prem and cloud. It's not just on-prem only, and everything now is moving into software. So this is why Nutanix went into the file server market because, as we know, Nutanix is a software company. So if you have a chance to change something, like we changed the SAN, which is relied on hardware, relied on switches, fiber channel switches, and all of that, and completely redefine it in a software manner. So Nutanix did that with our solution. So the customer is looking for cloud-like features on-prem. But sometimes when you go all cloud, you miss some features that traditional NAS solution or hardware solution offers. It's like you gain the scalability, the elasticity, and the easy to deploy and manage the whole solution. On the other hand, with a traditional NAS solution or a physical NAS solution, you have the control, the compliance. you have flexibility and resiliency. You can deploy active-active solution, the active standby, DR, all of this, you have control over it. You have enterprise-grade performance because you build it on-prem on your specification, and advanced data reduction. So what Nutanix did is combining these two into Nutanix Files solution, which has the flexibility of the cloud and the control of on-prem solution. So what is Nutanix Files? What is the features? So you have, as I mentioned, it's formally mentioned as the AFS. So you have your Enterprise Cloud OS or Acropolis OS, which is Nutanix HCI, which usually sits on top of it the virtual machines. Now we can set on top of it the file solutions, which will do it will act as a file store for files and folders, and share it using SMB and NFS. Okay, users can access it as a departmental share, or users using VDI can access as a personal folder, and or application can dump logs and data on it. Which the main features of Nutanix Files as follows: it's relying on features on the Nutanix itself, HCI, the Enterprise Cloud OS, like performance, auto-tiering, compression, deduplication, replication. All of this coming from inherited from Acropolis or Enterprise Cloud OS, and additional features related to file server like global multi-data center, standard protocol like NFS and SMP, single namespace across all the sites, no single point of failure. And the beautiful thing here, we manage it all using Prism, which is the single plane of management solution of Nutanix. So why you should care about files as a partner and propose it to your customer? So because files is software defined, as mentioned, data and API driven. It's all about. We'll see the dashboard, how easy it is. We have something called file analytics, which comes included with the products. How easy it is to do analytics and as classify the data. Simple and scalable, how easy to deploy, how easy to scale this solution. We can scale horizontal, scale up and scale out. Resilient and performant, is very resilient solution, as if one goes failure or the data replication, all of this we can configure and integrate with the cloud and in its intelligent solution. The other thing is files adoption across the region is doubling year on year. Right? So we have a 115% year on year growth. So every Nutanix customer can be a files customer, and if the customer is looking for replacing traditional NAS solution, we can propose files with a dedicated file server solution, which we'll talk about it later. So here we'll just talk about Nutanix 101, how Nutanix virtualized or changed the SAN to an HCI solution, and this is the building block of files. So here, this is our foundation, our core products, which is Acropolis, which will do the HCI solution, the storage virtualization. Prism is our management solution. AHV is our hypervisor, which is based on KVM and comes included with the product with no additional price. On top of that, we have a lot of additional products to be integrated with core. Now we'll talk about files. Files can run on AHV and on ESXi. It's not supported on Hyper-V yet. So as I said, we changed the game with traditional SAN solution. SAN solution will have different SAN boxes. Each box will have two storage controllers connected to a fiber channel SAN switch and connected to the hypervisor, the service. We change all of this into one box connected just to network, and we can scale. On top of that, the application is connecting to the virtualization layer seamlessly. It's the same way that application is running here to run in an HCI solution. So the idea is, or the brain, where is this storage controllers and the disk and SSDs were hiding behind the storage controller? We virtualize the storage controller. We make a virtual machine called a CVM, or a controller virtual machines, which reside in each node. This CVM will have a direct access to the storage that is behind it, like SSDs and HDDs, or NVMEs and SSDs, or only SSDs as all-flash solution. So all these CVMs will connect to each other using the CVM network and create a distributed storage fabric, which is what we call a pool. This pool will have a lot of features, enterprise class features that you get from a traditional SAN solution. This feature maybe it's a software based, so it's when you upgrade the license, you get additional feature. When you upgrade the version, you get an additional feature. So it's very agile. Otherwise, or it's different from the traditional SAN solution. You have to upgrade the whole hardware to get an additional feature. Features like snapshots, clones, compression, and deduplication. Data locality, what we are proud of, or this is the main performance gaining from Nutanix. Any virtual machine running on one node, its data is local to that node. This means this is the shortest bus for the data to do a read. If virtual machine 1 running on node 1 want to read any block, it will just go through the hypervisor to the CVM. The CVM will read it local from the SSDs and send it back. If virtual machine B is doing a write, it will write to the CVM. The CVM will write local and talk to another CVM and write to the another node. This is what we call replication factor. This is the resiliency part here. Scalability with Nutanix. So what we do with Nutanix, how we scale, it's what we call is linear scale, or Hadoop-like performance. So whenever we add an additional nodes, we get an increase of performance, because each part of the storage, the network, and CPU and compute in general is distributed across the nodes. Here we have only 3 nodes or 4 nodes, and now this is the workload is distributed here. Here we have 100 nodes or 40 nodes, and the workload is distributed on the 40 nodes from the storage, network, and compute concept. And we change, as we mentioned, we change how reliant the performance was, how we did the sizing on a traditional SAN. We calculated the RAID stripe and how much disk and spindles, IOPS of each disk, and all of this into a distributed architecture, as I said, Hadoop-like architecture, which is used in the Google and Azure data centers. So for the resiliency part, I touched on this a couple of slides ago. So when we write blocks, we write it to the control VM. The control VM will write it local, and we'll do a replication of the blocks into another node. We don't control the other node, it's distributed across the nodes. And what we control is we have at least one copy of the blocks. So this is RF2, replication factor of 2, means I have 2 copies of the data. RF3 means we have another one. RF3 means I have 3 copies of the data across my cluster. But RF2, minimum number of nodes are 3, because if one node goes down, I have 2 nodes to sustain the workload. In RF3, the minimum number of nodes is 5, means if 2 nodes goes down at the same time, I have my work, the data is written on the other 3 nodes. Capacity optimization. So if we just mentioned, as we just mentioned, RF2 and RF3, with RF2, we lose approximately 50% of the space because of writing the data, the block. If you have a 10 terabyte of data, I will write it on 20 terabyte. And with RF3, if I have a 10 terabyte of data, I write it on 30 terabyte of blocks. So this means in RF2 is 50%, and RF3 is we write only in 33% of the total size of the pool we have. So what Nutanix did to increase the total capacity of the cluster of Nutanix HCI cluster, we have a compression techniques and erasure coding and deduplication techniques. So this is, it depends on the type of data itself. This will increase the total, will get back to the customer the usability of the storage itself or the raw data itself. With compression, it's safe to say it's 30% of space claimation. With erasure coding depends on the write once, read many type of workload. If you have 6 nodes, I get 60% reduction. And the difference in deduplication, again, it depends on the type of data. It's VDI, so it will dedupe a lot of data. We usually say like 2-to-1 ratio or 3-to-1 ratio. Depends on the type of data. So let's go to some features on main features of Nutanix HCI. So snapshots, all Nutanix operations is VM centric. So whenever we say snapshot, it's a pair virtual machine. So Nutanix snapshots is pretty different than hypervisor-based snapshots because it's done on the disk level. We create the snapshot or on a VM level, but the snapshot itself is taken on a vDisk level because we control the storage, and we have the guest tool, Nutanix guest tool installed on the virtual machine to enable application consistent snapshots. We can do that. So now when we have a control on the disk level, we can take as many of the snapshots we want. It's every snapshot is independent to each other. I can delete any snapshot. It's not like a tree or like VMware does it. Is like a tree. If I want to revert back in any snapshot, I cannot go forward anymore. I can go back and forward as I like because each snapshot I take, it's a new vDisk or a new disk. The other thing is asynchronous replication. We have 3 types of replication: asynchronous replication, and synchronous replication, which is give us the 0 RPO, and NearSync replication. So the difference between NearSync and asynchronous, the RPO is from 1 hour to 24 hours, with NearSync from 1 minute to 15 minutes. So the idea with asynchronous, we can create a different protection domain, group of virtual machine we want to replicate from one side to another. We can have 1 to many, or we can have like protection domain 2, it's replicating from location 1 to 2 and from location 1 to 3. And we can have many to 1 as whatever we want. This is because it's 1 hour, it's not really sensitive, network sensitive replication. We just take one snapshot in each 1 hour and try to replicate it within this 1 hour period. The other thing is NearSync. NearSync, as I mentioned, is something close to synchronous replication, which give us 0 RPO, but doesn't require the network requirements and network demands, heavy network demands from synchronous replication, like dark fiber and all of that, latency and all of that. So continuous data protection. So we're always replicating the data using some Nutanix technology, which is lightweight snapshot. So how we do it? So we take a snapshot, a base snapshot every 15 minutes, and in between we take lightweight snapshot. We just replicate or see the changes that have been done in this 1 minute. So every 1 minute we see the changes and forward it to the other side. Every 1 minute we take some changes and all of that until the 15 minutes come again, and we'll take a full snapshot and replicate this. So this is very NearSync is very crucial for a customer who wants to do the near like 5 minutes RPO or 1 minute RPO or 15 minutes RPO without paying a lot in network pricing or network requirements that usually it is tagged to synchronous replication. So now we'll start in some conversation starters, just some sales slides, how we should talk to the customer, should we talk to inside the customer teams, and what use cases we should focus on. So virtualization admin is mainly focused on deploying the virtual machines and managing the virtualization environment. As I mentioned, files can work on VMware and HVM. So and is heavily reliant on other teams to start deploying the virtual machine and VDI environment or home directory for VDI requirements. So he wants to be self-contained, like he needs to have control on the storage. So just whenever he wants to deploy a virtual machine, he can have the storage of it, or he wants to deploy a VDI workload, he can map the home folder to it as soon as possible. Storage admin is the one who's managing the storage. He has too many storage solutions, like too many SANs or different NAS solutions. He wants to manage them. He wants to reduce total point of management and increase his productivity. If you have one management point to manage SAN and NAS, it will be great for him. At the end, application application team. So as we said, files is not just sharing file server for end user or VDI home directory in VDI. We can share the share. We can do an application share to write the logs on our file servers. So it will be a great help for the application team also. So what we need to focus with talking to our customer, we don't need to get into one-to-one like comparison and datasheet comparison between application and traditional NAS and files. We need to focus on the solution itself, how easy it is to deploy files, how easy it is to manage it, how it can eliminate the silos of as we did in SAN. We can eliminate the silos of NAS also solution. How it's software defined, so we don't rely on the hardware anymore. It's just software we can scale out and scale up easily in one click. And every 3 months we have a new release. As we will see in the later slide, every release will have a new feature. As a customer, you don't need to pay more for the features. We have only one license tier for files, either you have it or not. So if you have it, you can just use all the new features. The other thing with files, as I'm talking about license, any Nutanix customer will have 1 terabyte free of cost. He can use it, and it's supported by Nutanix. If you have any issues, he can raise a case with Nutanix. So what I would advise you all, any Nutanix customer base you have, just enable deploy the file server. It's very easy, just a couple of clicks. Let him use it, let him get fond of it, like it, and whenever he increase the usability by more than 1 terabyte, we can do the coding and we can start selling him files and replacing his traditional NAS or traditional Microsoft File Server is using. So I touched on these three before. What is the use cases or main use cases of Nutanix Files? So the main use case is replacing the NAS, consolidating all the file services in one box with ideally it will be the same box with the virtual machine and VDI and Nutanix Files. Here is use simple NFS. We can share with NFS as an NSMP. We can do a DR, single namespace or unified namespace between main site and DR. Reduce the footprint, and we can do the replication file server to file server replication. All of this is tested and tried with Nutanix as a HCI solution and Nutanix as a file server. The other use case is user profile and home directories mainly for VDI. So with the next slide, I will see how big of impacts in performance we can improve the VDI solution just by enabling files. And as I mentioned, the application data itself, we can store it on files. And we have another solution called Nutanix Buckets, which is object storage, which is it is like it can scale into petabytes. So if the application is utilizing big storage or a very huge storage consumption, we can propose something else called buckets, which is object storage. So what doesn't suit Nutanix Files? Nutanix Files is not for virtual machine. We can propose HCI for that, or Nutanix Acropolis OS. It's not for in-memory database. File server sensitive, like 1 millisecond response time, is not for that application to run the application on top of files. Is not for GPFS, the global file, Google, for the high performance compute applications with the GPFS requirement. Is not an ideal for HDFS type of workload. So if you can see here, this is some use cases and customer success use cases on Nutanix. You can find it on nutanix.com. You see first this column of customer. We're able to scale. We have 2 dedicated file server. We can scale, can store up to 1 petabyte of data. New York Live, it's 600 user profile, 6K user profile stored on files. Here is 15 sites. As we mentioned, we can support robots also. So 15 sites with a single namespace across all the sites. The last one is we deployed 2 clusters of 14 nodes, AFS cluster storing medical images, which is usually like stored once and read a lot of read many. So in the other column, we have a performance use cases. PBD have shown the 300% improvement in login time just by introducing AFS to the mix or files. Australian government again in reducing the login times. Previously they were errors login, with files just increased. This one, we by deploying 2 sites or 2 clusters for 12 nodes, we help support 16K of VDI users. So ecosystem, we support a lot of Veeam should be here also, a lot of backup solution like inline antivirus, peer software to do the single namespace workload, single namespace replication. So lastly, we'll talk about Nutanix Files features. So here in 3.1, you will see the features released in 3.1, 3.2, 3.5. Now we are in 3.6, and there is a lot of features like NearSync replication in 3.6 is introduced, and a lot of features you can see there is additional features per release is adding into the your customer will have a new features every release. So multi-protocol access means I have this have my file share will have either traditionally you will have either a file share shared by NFS or shared by SMP. Now we can have the same file share accessed by Linux users and Windows users utilizing something called mapping, the permission mapping between NFS and SMP permissions. So the other thing I also touched in this point previously, I can sell Nutanix files as a dedicated file server. So it's only a Nutanix nodes on top of it files, which will have a dedicated SQ and will reduce the cost a lot. Or we have a combined VMs and file servers on top of the same Nutanix nodes. Okay. Lastly, the Nutanix File Analytics is additional one virtual machine without any cost. Any file, any Nutanix files, customer can deploy it. It will give him a lot of insight on whatever the data is stored in files. It's a data about the data, how many like type of data you have, what is the storage, trends of the data, the capacity trends, and all of that. Audit trails, who deleted what. If someone start deleting a lot of files, will detect it and start sending anomaly detection. There is someone's either creating a lot of files or deleting a lot of files or doing a change permission. This is very crucial for something like ransomware attacks and all of that. So let's recap. So Nutanix Files is software defined, is in gist of what Nutanix is doing, everything in software. It's scalable, very resilient, highly available, and the performance utilizing whatever underneath from Nutanix HCI, so the compression, deduplication, data locality, all of this, it is there. So manageability is single plane, single click management, single click concept that Nutanix have using Prism single plane of management of managing all your infrastructure. So ideally, we have a Nutanix customer running HCI virtual machine on top of it, and we have another cluster using to the files, and on top of it VDI. So all of this can be managed from Nutanix Prism, and all of this performance optimization and this auto-tiering is done and managed by the same console. Flexibility means I can scale out and scale up anytime. I can deploy files on robots or with a single node only. I can provide a single namespace across all the sites, and of course on all the nodes. I do a capacity planning and scaling planning. So automatically, if the performance is degraded, Nutanix Files will detect there is a bottleneck in one file server or something and try to rebalance. If the file server cannot rebalance anymore, it will raise alert to the administrator. You need, and will give the recommendation. You need to scale up or scale out. Scale up means increase the compute and memory for each file server virtual machine, or scale out, deploy another virtual machine. I didn't mention this, but we will deploy 3 virtual machines called FSVM, file server virtual machine, on 3 nodes. So each file server cluster will have a minimum of 3 FSVM deployed. If one node goes down, the 2 will take over. The user workload, like we have 2 type of access, or 2 type of file share. Department share, which will usually load balance per FSVM. Like finance will be here, IT will be here, HR will be there on file server 3. We have user file share type of workload, so it will be load balance per user. So user A access the file share, it will be sent to FSVM1. User B access will be sent to FSVM2. It's like this, round robin, until the whole users are assigned to an FSVM. Lastly is the analytics part, intelligence, and doing audit trail. So I don't think any other NAS solution in the market giving all of these features included with the product, with no additional license or no additional configuration. Just deploy one virtual machine, one click, and you have all of this in the finger of yours. So I would like to thank you, and I will go on now to see the Q&A if there is any. No, there is no more question. Okay. Thank you, guys. Hope you tune in to the next sessions.